There are 41 people on federal death row. This is part 2 of the series. Brandon Basham, South Carolina, 19 years on death row. Chadrick Fulks, South Carolina, 19 years on death row. A native of Kentucky, Basham was serving out the last years of a term for felony forgery conviction in the Hopkins County Detention Center in Kentucky in 2002. That October, Chadrick Evan Fulks was assigned to be Basham's new cellmate. Early in November, Fulks was also accused with a second, more serious state offense, first-degree abuse of a child under the age of 12. Together, on November 4, 2002, Fulks and Basham climbed the wall in the recreation area and fled on foot from the correctional facility. By November 5th in the evening, Basham and Fulks arrived at James Hawkins' house in Hanson, Kentucky, and after approaching the residence, Basham knocked on the door and requested to use the phone. After making 2 calls, Basham informed Hawkins that his car had broken down, and Hawkins consented to take him to a convenience store nearby. Fulks accompanied Hawkins and Basham as they departed the house, and the 3 men drove off in Hawkins' vehicle. The 2 men told Hawkins that their car broke down in Roberts, Kentucky. Fulks instructed Hawkins to go to Indiana after informing him throughout the drive that the disabled car was actually there. Later, Fulks reversed the directions once more. By then, Hawkins was being driven to their desired location by Basham, who was waving a knife at him. Eventually, Fulks took over the wheel, steered the vehicle into a field, and gave Basham the order to fasten Hawkins to a tree. Fulks eventually finished the task himself after getting angry with Basham's speed and tying. Wearing flip-flops, a short-sleeved vest, and shorts, they left Hawkins. After 15 hours, Hawkins managed to release himself and signaled a passing car. Later that day, when police questioned him, he revealed that Fulks and Basham were the ones who had abducted him. The pair went to Portage, Indiana to see Tina Severance, one of Fulks' ex-girlfriends, after leaving Hawkins. They left Hawkins' car at the motel and made their way to Severance and her friend Andrea Roddy's shared trailer. After that, the 4 took a car to a hotel in northern Indiana, where they spent the following few days. Roddy and Basham eventually started a relationship. While in Indiana, Fulks asked Severance if she knew of anyone who could provide him with guns. After telling Fulks that one of her friends, Robert Talsma, kept multiple guns at his residence, Severance and Roddy decided to lure Talsma to head out by offering to buy him breakfast. Basham and Fulks broke into Talsma's house while he was having breakfast with the women, taking 4 guns, a ring, and multiple blank checks. After that, they met up with Severance and Roddy again, and the 4 of them drove to Sturgis, Michigan in Severance's van. On November 8, Fulks and Severance went to Goshen, Indiana to use Mary Jane and methamphetamines with Fulks' brother, Ronnie Fulks. Basham and Roddy stayed at a hotel in Sturgis that night. During the night, 2 policemen started pounding on doors at the Sturgis hotel where Basham and Roddy were sleeping. After opening his door and noticing the officers, Basham slammed it, and he pulled out a .22 caliber handgun he had stolen from Talsma. Ultimately, the officers left before they could get to Basham's door. Nevertheless, Basham told Roddy that he was willing to shoot the cops. To buy some random items, Basham and Roddy traveled to a nearby Kmart early on November 9. After meeting 3 teenagers in the parking lot, Basham told Roddy he wanted to kill them because they had some money. Using some of the stolen checks, Basham bought some snacks and then invited the teens back to the hotel room. Shortly afterwards, Severance and Fulks returned to the hotel and the teens departed. Then, Severance's van was driven by Fulks, Basham, Roddy, and Severance to Goshen, Indiana, residence of Fulks' brother, Ronnie Fulks. The 4 of them took Severance's van and headed to Picketon, Ohio on November 10, 2002. Again, Basham bought miscellaneous items using stolen checks, which Roddy then gave back for cash. In addition, Fulks stole a cell phone and pocketbook from a Walmart parking lot, and Basham and Fulks purchased 2 sets of camouflage clothes. They chose a motel room in Kenova, West Virginia, which is close to Huntington, on November 11. Dressed in their camouflage outfits, Fulks and Basham departed the hotel room on their own and did not return until early on November 12. 19-year-old Samantha Burns, a student at Marshall University, was employed at the Huntington Mall J.C. Penney's shop. Burns additionally sold candy boxes, which she kept in her van as part of a school fundraiser. Burns and her aunt met on November 11 at Penney's to buy clothes for one of Burns's nieces. They parked in different parts of the mall. Burns informed her mother over the phone at 9:46 p.m. that night that she would be spending the night at a friend's house. Since then, she disappeared. A local fire crew was called to a reported explosion and fire at a remote area 3 miles outside of Huntington on November 12, 2002, early in the morning. At the cemetery, the responding firefighters discovered a burned-out automobile that was subsequently recognized as Burns's. Fulks revealed that he had stolen some cash when he and Basham arrived back to the motel with dirty clothes. The four of them left the motel later that morning and headed to South Carolina, where Fulks had spent a number of years throughout the 1990s. Some details surfaced that connected Fulks and Basham to Burns's abduction. In the van, Roddy and Severance claimed to have seen mud and one of Burns's candy boxes. Basham began wearing Samantha Burns's heart-shaped necklace around his neck. Basham admitted to the women that he had taken the ring from a car and the candy from a girl who was selling it. Along with other things, Roddy also discovered Burns's picture ID thrown out. Furthermore, it was later discovered that Fulks made 2 ATM withdrawals from nearby banks on November 11 using Burns's card. Fulks, Basham, Severance, and Roddy arrived at a motel in Little River, South Carolina on November 12. The following day was a day of relative relaxation. Fulks and Basham went shopping, swiped wallets and handbags from unattended cars, and came back to the motel room to drink, smoke, and play cards. The four relocated to a motel in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina on November 14. After leaving the women, Fulks and Basham headed to Conway, South Carolina. The pair broke into Sam Jordan's Conway house with the intention of stealing guns. Sam's father, Carl Jordan, arrived at the house just as Fulks and Basham were heading out. Fulks made an effort to crash Severance's van with Jordan's car, but he was unsuccessful. Basham left the house and fired a shot into a neighboring greenhouse. Jordan's car window was damaged by a bullet fired by Fulks. Jordan left the area while Fulks and Basham pursued him while continuing to fire. After a while, Fulks and Basham gave up chasing Severance's van and stole a vehicle, which they then took to the Conway Walmart. When Basham arrived at the Walmart, he went up to a blue BMW car that Alice Donovan, 44 years old, was driving. Fulks was waiting at the back of the parking lot when Donovan was forced to drive by Basham, who got into the car. There, Fulks got into the driver's seat and took off. At 4:03 p.m., Fulks went to a gas station and paid with Donovan's ATM card. Donovan called her daughter about 4:30 p.m. to let her know she would be arriving home late from shopping. Later that day, a number of men from the B3 Farms Hunt Club saw a BMW driven by 2 men and a woman pull to the end of a road near the lodge, turn, and drive away. Like Burns, Donovan disappeared. Afterwards, when Fulks and Basham got back to their Myrtle Beach motel, they informed Severance and Roddy that they had to leave town because Severance's van had been seized and Basham had shot at some police officers. Basham and Fulks left Severance and Roddy behind at Myrtle Beach and got into Donovan's BMW, heading towards West Virginia. In Little River, Myrtle Beach, and Raleigh, North Carolina, Donovan's ATM card was used. In the meantime, Severance claimed that her van had been stolen and filed a false police report. Fulks and Basham arrived at Beth McGuffin's house near Huntington, West Virginia on November 15, 2002. Fulks' childhood friend McGuffin consented to let Fulks and Basham to stay at her house. Basham was presented to her by Fulks as Tommy Blake. On November 15, Fulks and Basham bought crack cocaine later on to split amongst them. In addition, Basham and McGuffin started dating. Basham gifted Burns's heart-shaped ring to McGuffin. The three of them watched a news report on November 16 on Samantha Burns's disappearance. When McGuffin remarked that Burns was likely dead, Fulks stated, "She is dead." The FBI was looking into the kidnapping of James Hawkins as they thought Fulks and Brandon Basham had done it after breaking out of jail. The FBI was informed that Severance had reported her van stolen and that the two guys may be in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. When the FBI and local officials spoke with Severance on November 16, they discovered that Fulks and Basham had left the area. When Alice and Donovan vanished, the FBI also learned about it and began to suspect Fulks and Basham. After smoking Mary Jane together on Sunday, November 17, Fulks and Basham told McGuffin they were going to Arizona and left her home. Instead, they made a stop around 20 minutes outside Huntington in the Ashland Mall in Ashland, Kentucky. At some point throughout the evening, Basham approached the 15-year-old daughter of Deanna Francis as she got into the passenger side of their car in a Walmart parking lot. After attempting to get inside the car and pointing a gun at the adolescent, Basham requested for directions to Greenville, Kentucky. Basham observed that Deanna's daughter was talking on her phone, so he turned to leave, saying, "My bad, I didn't mean to scare you." Deanna called 911 right away. When Ashland police officer Matt Davis learned of the attempted carjacking from dispatch, he was about 4 blocks away from the Ashland Mall. After driving to the mall, Davis noticed Brandon Basham, who fit the description of the person he thought would be the carjacker. As soon as Davis got out of his patrol car and got close to Basham, Basham started to run. Drawing his gun, Basham fired a warning shot into the air as Davis pursued him through the shopping center. Basham grabbed his firearm again as the pursuit went on, turned and fired at Davis, who returned fire with 3 shots of his own. Eventually, Basham found his hiding place in a rail yard near the Ohio River. After Davis asked for reinforcements, the location was surrounded. Over an hour later, at roughly 9 o'clock at night, Basham turned himself in to the authorities and gave his name as Josh Rittman. Authorities discovered a crack cocaine pipe and a knife on Basham's person that were subsequently determined to belong to Alice Donovan. It was several days later when Basham's weapon was found inside the train car. That night, folks went back to McGuffin's house and watched a news clip about Basham's apprehension. On November 18 in the morning, folks departed from McGuffin's home and drove Donovan's BMW to his brother's home in Goshen, Indiana. After folks pulled over at a rest area, an Ohio State trooper approached him after determining that the BMW was stolen. This led to an extremely fast chase that reached speeds of over 130 miles per hour. Fulks almost hit another trooper during this pursuit, but he was able to get away and escape capture. Eventually, in the morning hours of November 20th, Fulks reached his brother's house. However, Fulks was detained when he drove to a barn with his brother Ronnie and Ronnie's girlfriend to hide the BMW since police were watching Ronnie's house. Later on, the bodily fluids of an unnamed female and Fulks' semen were discovered in the rear seat of the BMW. Investigators in West Virginia discovered that Josh Rittman was actually Brandon Basham. On November 19 at 2 a.m., Basham had his first interview. When investigators initially spoke with him, he said that he and Fulks had broken out of prison and committed felonies in the process. Afterwards, he acknowledged that they had gone to Conway, South Carolina, and abducted a woman there, but Basham maintained that the woman was still alive and with Fulks. On November 19, around 9:45 a.m., Basham was interviewed again by investigators. Investigators were told by Basham and Fulks that they had abducted a man after fleeing from prison and that they had guns with them when they abducted Donovan. He also revealed to detectives that they had driven Donovan to Ashland, Kentucky, and that Fulks was waiting for Basham when he was apprehended. They had also used her credit cards to collect cash. This time, Basham claimed that because Donovan was not with him and Fulks at the Ashland Mall, he believed she had passed away. Basham allegedly informed investigators that Fulks got a girl in West Virginia during this interview. Brandon Basham was interviewed by FBI investigators for 7 hours on November 20th. This time, Basham informed detectives that after they had taken Donovan hostage, Fulks had driven Donovan to a remote location where he essayed her, bound her, and then abandoned her. Furthermore, Fulks was the one who, according to Basham, really carjacked Donovan. In addition, Basham made it clear that by saying that Fulks got a girl in West Virginia, he meant that they had taken credit cards from a girl, not that they had abducted other people. Investigators thought Donovan might still be alive at this point. Basham sketched out a map of the locations that he and Fulks had visited with Donovan. Despite a 2-day investigation, police officers were unable to find any evidence of Donovan's whereabouts. On November 25, Basham, who was now under legal representation, agreed to help detectives locate Donovan's body once more. He showed the detectives a map that indicated going through a cemetery and said that Donovan's body was found in the woods, covered but not buried. There were no particular landmarks that Basham could point out to help the investigators. Through legal counsel, Brandon Basham notified the investigators on November 26 that Samantha Burns had passed away and that he and Fulks had tossed her body into the river near Huntington by rolling it down an embankment. A search team was assembled by the FBI and state authorities 2 days later, on November 28, to look for Donovan's body in Brunswick County, North Carolina. Basham informed the detectives that he and Fulks had passed the park, removed Donovan's body from the vehicle, hauled it into the forest, and covered it. Twice, when he pointed out locations where he and Fulks had taken Donovan, Basham broke down in tears. Subsequently, Basham admitted to the detectives that he had discarded a purse strap belonging to Liz Claiborne at the Beatree Farms Cemetery. There was no success in searching the cemetery. While incarcerated pending trial, Brandon Basham started sending letters to McGuffin in late November 2002. In these letters, he revealed his true identity, declared his love for her, denied having hurt that girl from South Carolina, and blamed Fulks for their criminal spree. Basham said that Fulks had lied to him. He also lied to McGuffin, saying that the ring he gave her as a present was not stolen. Please hit that subscribe button if you like my channel. See you next time. Bye bye.